the 2022 EHL is still going on, and yet it has already given us games of Herculean proportions, world-class performances, iconic images, and of course, Rot-Weiss Köln was the very centre of one of these performances on Friday, April 15th. Köln came into this game as favourites, and without Kemperman, Kellerman or De Wijn, Kampong would certainly need exceptional performances from their other main guys. And yet, though Kampong definitely had more than enough quality left to get something out of this game, I don't think any other team would or could have beaten the Germans. Part of the appeal of Rot-Weiss to spectators, apart from the individual brilliance of players, is the ease with which that team can switch from one system or game plan to another. Now, that all counts for nothing if the execution isn't flawless or if the structure and discipline on the pitch isn't respected, but this game was an outstanding example of everyone doing everything perfectly. Köln came into this game seeking to outnumber Kampong in every situation, which is a system that's heavily reliant on Mats Grambusch and Timo Orus. They did their jobs perfectly. As they'd played just 2 days earlier, Kampong weren't as physically fresh as the Germans, but they set up a half-court press. On one hand, it forces Köln to do the work and could tire them out, but equally, that guarantees Köln sees a lot of the ball, which is never a good thing. Mats Grambusch set up as the point of contact when Köln were outletting, and the rest of the midfield and forwards bolted up the pitch to create huge gaps in the attacking third and on the wings. Part of trying to outnumber the opponent is knowing when to attack and when to just pass it around in order to get the opponents to come out of their shell. Many teams often try to outnumber their opponents just for the system to completely fail because of impatience. However, Köln passed it around more times than I can recall, and they always made sure to keep the centre of the pitch as busy as possible. Rot-Weiss knew Kampong would be man-marking their forwards, and therefore set up shop right around the penalty stroke dot. They would often be joined by a midfielder and would take turns creating leads out wide when the ball was being played around. Not only does that tire out defenders, but look at where Terence Peters is on the pitch. That is so good by Köln. The Germans did this all game long, and the way they created their opportunities was simple but effective. Defensively, Köln forced Kampong to often play aerials, but it seemed like every single one of these aerials just ended up in a German stick. The defensive setup whenever Kampong looked to go on the break or to play the aerial was as such. They divide the pitch into 3 parts: left, right and centre. Köln would block off the side on which the ball was, as well as the centre, and then they moved accordingly if Kampong played it around. If they tried the crossfield aerial, it would give defenders enough time to move and set up a defensive wall that looked just impossible to go through. Bloemendaal often uses the crossfield aerial and then the back line. Köln defended that perfectly this game. Additionally, Kampong were just too slow. There was no support and Köln did need to isolate Terence Peters. Kampong did that work for them. But time and time again, Kampong just made wrong decision after wrong decision. Look at the options here. Instead, an aerial is played, Köln puts the pressure on and blocks all the ways into the D. Kampong would occasionally pass it back and then try a tip in. The few times they tried it, it worked, which begs the question, why did they not try it more? Köln often tried to press Kampong into errors, and it often worked, but when Kampong kept possession of the ball in their own half, Köln would also set up a half-court press with one lone forward, in this instance Christopher Rühr, half-heartedly pressing. The one crucial difference between Kampong and Köln's half-court press was that Köln's other forwards actually dropped back into the midfield. That obviously forced Kampong's midfield and strikers to run even more to create smaller gaps, but it also ensured that Kampong's fullbacks couldn't venture too high unmarked. And even worse than that, Kampong would sometimes even drop back into their own 23. There's no way out. This is shocking. All 3 goals that this game saw came on a penalty corner, so let's talk about them. Köln had a few penalty corners opportunities before the first went in, and Balk ran out perfectly for each one of them. Köln then switched it up and the first goal followed. All balls were trapped at the first castle, but when they finally played it to the second castle, it forced Balk to slightly change his running course and thus gave Tom Grambusch half a metre more space. Peters commits a massive error moving his body out of the way. It certainly wasn't a perfect drag flick, but it was good enough. As for Kampong's penalty corners, until Jansson's goal, Fanache was just too good. The second half really wasn't different from the first, style-wise and system-wise. Kampong looked visibly tired, and it really looked like this was Köln's doing. They missed easy passes, easy controls, the support from the midfield was often 1 second too late, Kampong remained much lower than the halfway line on their half-court press. I wouldn't even call it a half-court press anymore. the pace of the game drastically slowed down, but even then, Kampong's reluctance to play higher up the pitch caused them problems. Look at where Peters has to pick up the ball, and then the situation he ends up in. Where are the options? And from there on out, it really was a matter of remaining structured defensively for Köln and to potentially get a goal. I mean, look at this. Köln then had another PC late in the period, they played it to the second castle once again, and just like that, it was 2-0. That really should have been saved, but then again, Köln deserved that goal. The fourth quarter saw even more unforced errors from Kampong. Köln did the little things that Kampong didn't, such as Rühr losing the ball here and sprinting back to stop the goals. It's simple, but only one team did those things. From here on out, Köln passed it around, and though Kampong did get a penalty corner and a goal very late in the game, it was too late. An absolutely dominant display from the Germans saw them advance to the semi-finals, and though the score was only 2-1, this was a near perfect game in every aspect and facet possible. Thanks for watching, I'll talk to you later.